Hello everyone, good afternoon. For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. To begin today, some big news in Colombia. The Colombian government and the FARC guerrillas have announced a final agreement regarding victims' reparation as part of that country's ongoing armed struggle. Now, the announcement was made in Havana in the presence of a delegation of victims' representatives that arrived Monday night to Cuba. The historic deal includes a set of measures to protect the victims and prevent situations which led to their victimization. And for more now, we turn straight to our correspondent there in Colombia, Natalia Margarita. She is in the capital of Bogota. Natalia, pretty big step here. What are people saying? What's the reaction there in Colombia to this historic announcement?
Well, we have to say, Cody, that representatives of social movements as well as victims organizations were very, very quick to react to this announcement. They have already held right here where we are to welcome this latest announcement on a final agreement on the issue of victims and justice. Particularly, they welcome three specific principles or objectives of this announcement. That is, on the one hand, that truth is at the center of this agreement. Secondly, that there is a compensation for the victims of the armed conflict, and this compensation will be done according to the damages houses to each and every single victim here in Colombia. And the last thing is the guarantees of non-repetition. They have welcomed that in this agreement it's pretty explicit that the government and the FARC are very much committed to the guarantees of non-repetition, meaning that we don't see further victims here in Colombia. But it's also the fact that there have been specific mechanisms to accomplish those objectives, to comply with those principles have been established. That is the so-called special jurisdiction for peace, that is the legal framework for peace, but also a commission for the clarification of the truth on the armed conflict. And the last issue is also a special unit to find all those who have in the context of the armed conflict here in Colombia. So overall, victims organizations have welcomed this agreement, but they have made it clear also that what is written in the paper is very much okay with them. They are very much okay with it. But now we still to see how this is going to be successfully implemented, Cody.
We talk a lot about paramilitarism there in Colombia. Is that issue addressed, Natalia, as part of this agreement?
It was mentioned in the agreement, Cody, and it's also a very interesting point that you ask, because victims here in this press conference that I have been here, they have said that the issue of paramilitarism it needs to be tackled. It must be tackled in order to guarantee this non-repetition. It has to do also with the issue of truth, according to them. They have said that in this commission for the truth clarification, it also needs to be exposed the connivance between sectors of the military forces and politicians here in Colombia with paramilitary groups. That is necessary to expose that truth that have been very much denied in order that the issue of paramilitarism can be tackled and therefore to really be able to speak about guarantees of non-repetition here in Colombia, Cody.
And what about amnesty, Natalia? I understand that that's also a big part of this agreement. Exactly, do we know which crimes will be pardoned and which crimes won't be pardoned?
That's a very interesting issue too, Corey. So regarding the amnesty, it has been said that crimes against humanity will not be subject of amnesty, and this is, of course, in compliance with international humanitarian law. So this was made clear, and it's absolutely clear in the agreement that we have already received here in Colombia. So those are the crimes that are not going to be subject to amnesty, crimes against humanity.
All right, Natalia Margarita there reporting from Colombia. Historic developments there in the country's armed conflict as both sides have reached an agreement regarding victims. Natalia, thank you. We move on now to another big story today in Latin America. The Brazilian Congressional Ethics Committee has voted some hours ago to launch a corruption They're going to launch a corruption investigation against the Speaker of the lower house of the country, Eduardo Cunha, which could end with his seat being revoked. Now, the narrow vote of 11 against 9 ended a process that has sparked controversy for weeks. Cunha is being investigated by the Attorney General for his suspected involvement in the Lavajoto scandal, in which politicians and businessmen stole millions of dollars from the state-controlled oil giant Petrobras. Despite the vote, the investigation could be appealed by Cunha himself. Next door in Argentina, thousands of Argentinians took to the streets to protest against the new government's intention to eliminate the current media law. The largest protest was in Buenos Aires' iconic Plaza de Mayo, located in front of the Casa Rosada presidential palace. Now, other demonstrations were reported in the provinces of Mendoza, Salta, Cordoba, Santa Fe, and Mar del Plata. The popular reaction came after the president created a new communications secretariat to limit and modify the current media regulations. The move has been regarded as a favor to large private media corporations, which are widely affected by property limitations imposed by law. Also in Argentina, the new Argentinian government confirmed that it will eliminate a mandatory price records and taxes on imports. Now, the former government, led by President Cristina Fernandez, had established a system to oversee prices and profit margins. As Mauricio Macri explained during a meeting of industrial businessmen, his policy will be to eliminate export taxes to industrial products as well.
Now I would like to announce to you all what I did this morning in the farming sector. Here we need to reward those who are motivated by the challenge of exporting, investing, and innovating. This is why, from today, there will no longer be taxes on industrial exports in Argentina, because it is not appropriate.
We turn to Central America, where a prominent politician and the current head of Honduras' football federation has decided to turn himself in to the United States Department of Justice due to his involvement in the ongoing investigations into FIFA. For more now, we turn to our correspondent in Tegucigalpa, Gerardo Torres.
Former Honduran President Rafael Callejas has traveled today to the United States to face trial for the accusations in the corruption scandal known as FIFA-gate. Callejas, as many other coordinators and presidents of the soccer federations in the Latin American and the Caribbean, is being accused of receiving bribes to give away television rights in the eliminatory games towards the Worldwide Championship of 2010. Callejas was the president of Honduras since 1990 to 1994 and has at least 8 corruption scandal accusations that have never been judged in the country. He is currently the most important figure of the ruling National Party and has complete impunity against these accusations. Tonight, many protesters are starting to join here on the Morazan Boulevard in Tegucigalpa to celebrate his imprisonment that they say didn't came from the national justice system, but came from an international demand. Gerardo Torres, Telesur, Central America.
Also in Central America, hospitals in Guatemala have reopened after weeks of strikes by medical staff. Thousands of people went back to the medical centers. Now, after weeks of striking, doctors and nurses were able to force the government to increase medicine supplies and equipment. However, the doctors' union is warning that the amount of supplies and equipment will only help for some weeks and that the bigger crisis of an underfunded public health system has not been addressed. School teachers in Mexico are organizing a caravan to demand the release of dozens of leaders and members of their union. Now, the activists were arrested after they refused to implement the country's so-called education reform. Our correspondent Clayton Kahn now reports from Mexico.
¿Quiere el compañero Juan Carlos? ¿Qué quiere la compañera Sara?
These dissident teachers are reading off the names of more than 30 public school teachers who have been arrested in recent weeks because of their protests against the government's implementation of teacher evaluations.
The CNTE has called this action to demand for the freedom of our comrades. They've been in prison for several months and their families need them.
The teachers say their peaceful protests against the government's education reforms have been met with a massive deployment of state and federal police across the country.
There can be no dialogue with batons, with clubs, or when they kill our comrades or lock people up.
On Sunday, the teachers were hoping to hold open, transparent talks with the education authorities, but they failed to turn up. The teachers say their voice is not being heard and they are not being allowed to play their part in the changes in public education.
Before the teachers' protests, before the sit-ins, marches, mobilizations, we asked the government for a dialogue on our list of demands, which includes job security, but above all demands education should continue to be public and a human right.
Since the initial approval of the reform in 2012, the teachers have repeatedly argued that it represents an attempt to privatize public education and attack hard-won labor rights. Meanwhile, the Education Secretary Aurelio Nuño insists that it will make the teaching profession more competitive.
The best teachers will be selected through a competitive process across the country, and anyone who wants to be a school principal or supervisor can compete on merit. The evaluations will show how the teachers are doing, and on that basis, through effort and merit, they will be able to make more money and improve their careers.
The education authorities say more than 132,000 teachers have been evaluated so far. Although the minister promises that no teacher will be fired, the Independent Teachers Union believes the process of retraining that follows could open the door to layoffs. Clayton Cantelesur, Mexico City.
A group of nations has revealed plans to form on a new group to fight terrorism. We'll find out more about those plans to fight terror in the Middle East when we come back. Caracas, Havana, Mexico, Quito, Washington, wherever the newsmakers will be there. Watch it on telesurtv.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there. A world infinitely connected. Millions of people instantaneously interacting. Experiences relayed in 144 characters. Millions of lives in every corner of the planet. They're not tweets, they're stories. Watch it on telesurtv.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there.
The truth behind the power. We lift the lid on some of the world's most ruthless figures. Open file. Only on telesurtv.net in English. Wherever the news, you'll be there.
The United States Secretary of State John Kerry, he's in Moscow to discuss the Syrian conflict with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov. Now, both officials are set to focus on the future of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. The talks are considered a significant step forward towards finding a political solution to the Syrian conflict. The rebel factions have already agreed to hold talks with the Assad government, a major breakthrough after years of denying any role in the future of the country for the Syrian president. Now, during a press conference, Secretary John Kerry highlighted hopes of working together with Russia in a joint solution.
What is important to note is that even when there have been differences between us, we have been able to work effectively on specific issues. And Russia made a significant contribution to the dialogue on the Iran nuclear agreement. And now, in both of the Vienna discussions, Russia has been a significant contributor to the progress that we've been able to make.
A truce will begin Tuesday in Yemen as UN-sponsored peace talks are set to begin in Geneva. Now, the conflict has already cost thousands of lives there. The talks will gather representatives of the Houthi rebels and also representatives of the Saudi-backed ousted government of Ab Mansour Hadi. Concerns have grown as the al-Qaeda branch in the Arab Peninsula has gained territory in the country, and the so-called Islamic State group has confirmed operations there as well.
Only if we meet with good intentions can we continue the political process from where it stopped. From the good things coming from the Yemeni side, we can move on to a political process But before, we need to restore the country. We need the Houthis to surrender their arms and the restoration of legitimacy in the capital, Sana'a.
Saudi Arabia has revealed that 34 nations have agreed to form a new Islamic military alliance, as it's being called, to fight terrorism. Saudi Arabia's state-run press agency cited that the coalition is being established to eliminate terrorism through collaboration and that it should be fought by all means. Now, the new counterterrorism coalition includes nations with large and established armies such as Pakistan, Turkey, and Egypt, as well as war-torn countries with embattled military such as Libya and Yemen. Critics claim that Saudi Arabia and other nations that form the coalition are not doing enough to stop individual terrorist sponsors in their countries. Police have questioned a man and a woman suspected of having helped Ahmedi Coulibaly, who in January killed a policewoman in Malwahi and 4 Jews in a kosher supermarket in Paris. According to a judicial source, both are suspected of having helped Coulibaly obtain weapons. So far, 7 men have been charged and taken into custody in connection with that investigation. Ahead of the December 20th elections, Spain's Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy has faced off with his main opponent, socialist leader Pedro Sanchez, in a televised debate. Rajoy has been criticized for refusing to take part in 2 debates earlier this month. His participation in the last televised debate before the elections proved to be an uncomfortable one, as Sanchez boldly accused Rajoy of lying and being unfit for office due to corruption.
You shouldn't continue to be prime minister nor be candidate for the premiership. You should have resigned, assumed responsibility personally, and left the premiership. Mr. Rajoy, on December 20th, Spaniards will have to choose freely through their votes who will be the next prime minister. But I warn you that if you continue as prime minister, the cost to our democracy and the institution you want to represent is enormous, because the prime minister should be a decent person, Mr. Rajoy, and you aren't.
New Zealanders, they may have a new flag in 2016. Check out that flag. This comes after the public has chosen a new flag design. It's called the Silver Fern flag, and it will be put up as a challenger to the current flag. Now, a vote will take place in March, where the Fern flag will go against the current Union Jack design, which is a legacy of the country's history as a British colony. Leaders from the member states of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization have signed a series of cooperation documents and joint communique in China earlier on Tuesday. Now, the documents emphasize the significance of increasing cooperation among SCO member states. During a meeting of the SCO Council of Heads of Government, Russia indicated it wants to create an economic partnership between the Eurasian Economic Union, the SCO, and the ASEAN regional trading blocs. China's premier has said that the SCO should provide a reliable barrier to security threats to member countries, including those coming from terrorists. It has been 2 years since the start of a war in South Sudan that has forced 1 million people from their homes and left 4 million hungry. During this period, politicians have broken at least 8 commitments to peace. Despite a peace agreement on paper, over 185,000 people remain sheltered in UN camps across the country. Aid groups there have described conditions in the camps as deplorable, as they are overcrowded and lacking basic health care facilities. Argentina's football team, Club Atlético River Plate, will be facing off against Japan's Sanfrecce Hiroshima in Wednesday's Club World Cup semifinal in Osaka, Japan. Now, Argentina's team manager says the club will focus on getting more ball possession in the upcoming match. In the last few months, River Plate has coasted through the competition. If River Plate obtains this victory, they would be a step closer to winning the World Cup. River Plate has won 2 international tournaments this year. On Monday, the stars turned out for the Hollywood premiere of the hugely anticipated Star Wars film, The Force Awakens, as it's called. There they are. Secrecy ruled the red carpet there for the world premiere, as some stars stayed mum on details of plot twists and character development. However, fans at the red carpet reserved their biggest cheers for the stars and creators of the original Star Wars trilogy, which hit cinemas between 1977 and 1983. The franchise is credited for ushering in the current blockbuster era. And that's what we're covering. Plenty more on all of those and other stories at our website, telesurtv.net/English. Join us on social media as well, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. Have a great day.